A monument can be built to outlast not just its builders, but the very stars they watched. Ancient observatories are stone dialogues with the cosmos, engineered to capture celestial events that unfold over thousands of years. By the end of this exploration, you will see these ruins not as silent relics, but as dynamic, ticking clocks that connect us to a universe operating on a timescale beyond human life. How did cultures across the globe design structures to predict a solstice sunrise they would never see, or track the slow return of a distant star? What drove them to invest generations of labor into a project whose full purpose only the far future would understand? We are about to meet the master astronomers who turned mountains and monoliths into precise scientific instruments, and in doing so, left a permanent challenge for us in the present. What does it mean to build a legacy meant for an audience you will never meet? The sky was their unchanging library, and every sunrise a turning page. For the ancient astronomer, the cosmos was not a distant spectacle but a living, breathing presence. Their entire science was built upon patterns observed with the naked eye, recorded not in notebooks but in memory, myth, and the very stones of their world. A single shaft of sunlight piercing a temple doorway at dawn on the winter solstice was a data point of immense importance. The slow crawl of a star's rising point along the horizon from one generation to the next was a chapter in a story only their grandchildren's grandchildren would finish reading. This was a science of immense patience where the primary instrument was human perception calibrated across lifetimes. To understand the observatories they built, we must first abandon our modern tools. Imagine trying to map the precise dance of planets using only your eyes, your shadow, and a few carefully placed markers on the ground. This was their reality. Every temple aligned to a solstice sunrise, every stone circle framing a lunar standstill, was a permanent fixture in a grand celestial calendar. The driving force behind this was what scholar Anthony Aveni calls a cosmovision. This wasn't just astronomy for farming or telling time, though it served those vital purposes. It was a complete world view where the orderly motions of the heavens directly mirrored and governed the rhythms of life on Earth. The king's power, the season for planting, the timing of sacred ceremonies, all were validated by the stars. This sacred connection transformed astronomical observation from a mere task into a divine duty. But here we encounter their greatest technical hurdle and the true source of their genius. The sky is not perfectly fixed. There is a slow, majestic wobble in Earth's rotation called the precession of the equinoxes. It causes the positions of the stars and the timing of the seasons to shift imperceptibly over a cycle of about 26,000 years. This means a star that marked the spring equinox for your great-grandfather will not mark it for your great-grandson. The ancient builders knew this. Evidence suggests cultures from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica were aware of this gradual drift, so their challenge was monumental, literally. They had to design structures so precise, so fundamentally anchored, that they could continue to track these celestial events not for a decade, but for millennia. They were building stone clocks meant to keep time across dozens of human generations. This required a kind of long-term thinking that is almost foreign to us today. It demanded a societal agreement that the work they began, whose ultimate validation lay in a future they would never witness, was still worth every ounce of effort. What kind of culture makes that choice? To find the answer, we must now journey to specific points on the globe where this ambition was carved into the earth itself. This architectural alchemy began with a simple, profound act of looking. To turn a mountain or a monolith into an observatory, the builders first had to become one with the horizon. They practiced horizon astronomy, a method so elegant in its simplicity it borders on genius. Instead of tracking a star's path high in the sky, which changes dramatically, they focused on where it first peaked above the land or where it finally disappeared. That point on the horizon is far more stable over centuries. A notch between two distant hills, a solitary tree on a ridge, the peak of a far-off mountain. These became the fixed reference points in a giant natural protractor. The first task was to identify these key alignment points for the solstice sun or a significant star. They used tools we would find in a basic garden shed, wooden stakes, long ropes, and simple water levels to transfer these celestial bearings accurately to the construction site. But marking the spot was only the beginning. The real challenge was building something that would hold that alignment for 1,000 years. This is where their engineering genius shines. They sought bedrock, the unshifting bones of the earth itself, as their foundation. They would often carve directly into living rock or set their first and most critical stones upon it, ensuring the structure's core would not settle or tilt with time. Then they employed techniques like corbelling, carefully overlapping stones to create stable, inward-sloping walls for towers and chambers, and precise stone dressing, shaping multi-ton blocks so they fit together without mortar, yet with seams sometimes thinner than a blade of grass. This created a monument of immense stability, a frozen snapshot of the sky's geometry. But for tracking cycles longer than a human life, precision needed to be amplified. They engineered intentional narrowness, a slim window in a thick wall, a lone pillar framing a specific gap, a long, dark corridor ending in a small aperture. These acted like the sights on a rifle. By restricting the field of view, a tiny shift in a star's position over decades became a dramatic event, visible as the beam of light moved across a carved marker. At Chichen Itza, the Maya designed the Pyramid of El Castillo with such breathtaking precision that on the equinoxes, the play of sunlight and shadow creates the illusion of a serpent slithering down the staircase. This effect is not an accident of shadow. It is a calculated interaction between the pyramid's exact orientation, the angle of its steps, and the sun's specific path on those 2 days of the year. It is architecture performing celestial theater. Some cultures added another layer using water. Calm reflective pools could double the sky, allowing priests to observe the risings and settings of dangerous objects like the sun without looking directly at them, or to create dazzling light effects within enclosed spaces. This was the culmination of the alchemy. Passive observation transformed into an active, predictable, and communal spectacle. The stone instrument did not just measure time, it performed it, making the invisible, slow-motion dance of the cosmos visible to an entire community in a single, awe-inspiring moment. The silent, wind-swept plain of Salisbury holds a riddle in stone. Stonehenge stands not as a ruin, but as a Neolithic computer, its massive sarsen blocks forming a permanent equation written against the sky. Everyone knows its most famous function, the alignment of the central avenue with the rising midsummer sun. But to stop there is to read only the first line of a profound and ancient text. This monument was a project of staggering duration, built and rebuilt over perhaps 1,500 years. That time span alone tells us something crucial. This was not a single king's vanity project. It was a cumulative scientific endeavor, refined across 60 generations. Each new phase of construction, from the simple earthworks and Aubrey holes to the final towering trilithons, represents a deeper layer of understanding being literally set in stone. The outer circle and the great horseshoe of trilithons do more than frame the solstice sun. They also capture the moon at its most extreme northerly and southerly rising points, events that cycle over an 18.6-year period. This reveals a mind that was tracking not just the annual rhythm, but the longer, more complex harmonies of the celestial orchestra. Then there are the 56 Aubrey holes, mysterious pits encircling the site. Archaeoastronomer Gerald Hawkins saw in them a possible key, a simple but brilliant counting system. By moving markers between these holes in a set pattern, one could predict the ominous cycles of lunar and solar eclipses over a span of 56 years. Imagine the power this knowledge held to foresee the sun being swallowed by shadow and to ritually prepare for its return. This transforms Stonehenge from a simple calendar into an active predictive engine. But the most profound clue to their long-term thinking stands apart: the solitary heel stone. For an observer standing at the center of the circle, the midsummer sun would have risen directly over this stone. Yet, due to the slow precession of Earth's axis, that perfect alignment was a moving target over centuries. The builders likely knew this. They may have watched as, over generations, the sunrise point crept away from the stone's edge, a silent testament to a cosmos in slow motion. This implies a cultural memory so deep and stable that they could note a change their great-grandfathers had first observed and plan for a realignment their great-grandchildren would complete. So what was it? A temple, a calendar, a tomb? It was likely all these things bound together by a single purpose: to harmonize human life with the grand, inhuman timescales of the universe. The stones ask us a quiet, reflective question: can we, in our fast-paced world, even conceive of building a legacy meant for an audience 1,000 years from now? While Stonehenge whispers its secrets in stone and shadow, another desert holds an answer carved with stunning solar clarity. On a barren ridge in the coastal desert of Peru, 13 stone towers stand in a silent, precise line. This is Chankillo, and it is perhaps the most elegantly obvious ancient observatory ever discovered. Built over 2,300 years ago, its purpose is not a matter of scholarly debate. It is written directly into the landscape for anyone to see. The towers form a giant stone comb along the horizon. To the west and east of this ridge are two distinct, carefully built observation points. From these vantage spots, an observer would witness a perfect celestial performance. Throughout the year, the rising and setting sun would march along the line of towers. On the June solstice, it would rise at the northernmost tower. On the December solstice, it would rise at the southernmost. And on the equinoxes, it would rise directly in the gap between the 6th and 7th towers, right at the center of the range, the entire solar year captured in a single, breathtaking glance. This was a public calendar in stone, a device so intuitive that its meaning transcends time and language. But the genius of Chankillo is not just in its design, it is in its context. This solar observatory was not a lonely outpost. It was the ceremonial heart of a larger fortified complex, surrounded by walls, plazas, and buildings that speak of concentrated power. This changes everything. Here, the precise prediction of seasons was not merely a farming aid, it was the foundation of authority. The priests or rulers who controlled the observation points controlled time itself. They dictated when to plant and when to harvest, when to hold the most important ceremonies that ensured the sun's return and the community's prosperity. This knowledge was their ultimate power, legitimized by the undeniable, repeating truth of the cosmos, and that power had to be perpetual. The preservation of the sightlines over centuries is a testament to a profound societal agreement. Generations maintained this ridge, keeping it clear, protecting the view, ensuring the cosmic clock kept ticking. This was a collective investment in a future where their descendants would still need to read the sky with the same stone tool. So Chankillo answers one question with brilliant simplicity while posing another, far deeper one. When a society grants ultimate authority to those who hold the keys to celestial time, what happens to that power when the sky itself begins to slowly, imperceptibly, change its mind? The Maya looked at Venus and saw not just a planet but a divine omen. In their cosmology, the bright morning star was Kukulkan, the feathered serpent deity, and its appearances were tightly woven into the fabric of fate, governing the timing of warfare, the arrival of rains, and the legitimacy of kings. Tracking its precise movements was not an academic exercise, it was a matter of survival and sovereignty. This celestial imperative found its ultimate architectural expression in a structure that still puzzles and amazes, the Caracol at Chichen Itza. From the outside, it resembles a modern observatory, a round tower set upon broad rectangular platforms. But its true genius is hidden within its name, the snail, for a narrow, corkscrewing stone staircase winds up through its core. This spiral design was far more than an architectural flourish. It was a stable, sheltered passage to an elevated platform, a controlled environment for priests to conduct their celestial watches free from the distorting effects of the ground-level atmosphere. The key to its purpose lies in its narrow, slit-like windows. These are not decorative, they are precision optical tools. One set aligns perfectly with the northernmost setting point of Venus on the horizon, another with its southernmost. Over the planet's 584-day cycle, as it dances from evening star to morning star and back again, an observer inside the Caracol could mark its progress against these stone sites. But the Maya were thinking in much grander cycles. Venus completes 5 of its synodic cycles in almost exactly 8 solar years, a period of profound ritual significance. Astonishingly, the alignments of the Caracol's platform and its various sightlines appear to capture this 8-year harmony, integrating the rhythm of the planet with the rhythm of the sun. This means the builders were not just marking where Venus was, they were encoding where it would be, years and even decades into the future. This architectural prediction required a deep, accumulated database of observations, a legacy of watching passed down through generations. That data found its ultimate form in bark paper books like the Dresden Codex. Its famous Venus tables are a mathematical marvel, outlining accurate corrections to the planet's cycle over a span of centuries. They represent a civilization thinking in units of time that dwarf individual human life, using advanced arithmetic to keep their celestial calendar perfectly in sync with the gods. The Caracol, then, is stone mathematics. It is a physical machine built to solve an equation written in the sky, an equation whose solution was vital for telling leaders when to march to battle and farmers when to expect life-giving storms. It stands as a silent declaration that to understand the future, one must first build a monument to patience. Deep within the rolling green hills of Ireland's Boyne Valley, a great earthen mound has guarded a secret for over 5,000 years. Newgrange is older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids of Giza, and its purpose transcends the simple function of a resting place. It is a machine built for a single, breathtaking moment of light. For 362 days of the year, the innermost chamber of this passage tomb is a place of absolute, silent darkness. But for a handful of mornings around the winter solstice, something extraordinary happens. A slender beam of sunlight, golden and precise, penetrates a special opening above the entrance known as the roof box. It travels down a 60-foot-long passageway, its path perfectly calculated by the floor's gentle upward slope until it strikes the rear wall of the central chamber. For approximately 17 minutes, this sacred space, built to hold the remains of the honored, is flooded with a radiant, living light. This was not an accident of architecture. It is engineering of almost unimaginable foresight. To achieve this, the builders had to solve a complex 3-dimensional puzzle. They oriented the entire massive mound to within a single degree of the solstice sunrise. They carefully graded the stone floor of the passage so the sunbeam would travel straight and true to its target, and they sculpted the roof box itself, a narrow aperture of stone slabs, to act as a celestial lens, filtering and directing the dawn light. All of this was accomplished 5 millennia ago without metal tools, without written plans, using only stone, earth, and an intimate, generational knowledge of the sky. The effect transforms the tomb's meaning entirely. This was not a monument to an ending, but a dramatic, annual promise of a new beginning. At the year's darkest point, the sun itself was invited into the house of the ancestors to perform a miracle of rebirth. The experience, however, was intensely private. Unlike the public spectacle of Chichen Itza or the communal sightlines of Chankillo, this event was designed for a very few. Perhaps only a single priest or a chosen leader could witness the sunbeam piercing that inner darkness, a direct communication between the cosmic order and the realm of those who had passed. This exclusivity makes the long-term investment even more profound. A society mobilized to move 200,000 tons of stone and earth, not for a temple to be used daily, but for a symbolic event witnessed by a handful of people once a year, generation after generation. They were building a permanent covenant with the sun, a guarantee etched into the landscape that light would always return to conquer the dark. It speaks to a concept of time that was cyclical and eternal, where the journey of the soul was mirrored by the journey of the sun. What profound knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and symbolic meaning was held by these Neolithic builders, knowledge that seems to have faded from the world for centuries after. And what did it mean for a community to know that such a perfect, predictable miracle was built into the very heart of their landscape, a promise of return that outlasted every individual who ever witnessed its light? High on a ridge between soaring Andean peaks, a single carved stone stands as a testament to a different kind of celestial conversation. This is the Intihuatana of Machu Picchu, the hitching post of the sun. It is not a towering structure or a complex of walls, but a single, masterfully shaped granite pillar rising from the living bedrock of the mountain itself. Its name reveals its sacred purpose, to literally tether the sun in its path across the heavens, to prevent it from wandering away and leaving the world in perpetual cold and darkness. On the equinoxes, this stone performs its most famous miracle. As the sun passes directly overhead, the pillar casts no shadow at all, a moment of perfect, suspended equilibrium between light and dark. This was a profound symbol of cosmic balance for the Inca, a moment when the world stood still. But to see the Intihuatana as only an equinox marker is to underestimate the sophistication of Inca astronomy. The stone is a three-dimensional puzzle of angles and planes, each surface carefully beveled and oriented. Scholars suggest these facets could have been used as sighting guides to track the sun's position not just on 2 days, but throughout the entire year, marking the solstices and the subtle progress between them. There is also compelling evidence it was used to observe a very specific solar event, the zenith passage. This is the day when the sun passes exactly overhead at noon, a date that shifts depending on your latitude. For the Inca, whose empire stretched across dramatic mountainous terrain, tracking this event was crucial for agricultural calendars and territorial understanding. The Intihuatana, in its specific location, could have pinpointed this day with silent, shadowy precision. This stone is more than a tool, it is a symbol of an entire worldview. It represents the culmination of astronomical knowledge gathered over millennia by the many cultures that preceded the Inca in the Andes. The Inca synthesized this learning and embedded it into the very fabric of their state religion. The emperor, the Sapa Inca, was considered the direct descendant of the sun god Inti. The Intihuatana was the physical anchor of that relationship. By controlling and interpreting the stone's celestial messages, the emperor performed his divine role as the essential mediator between his people and the life-giving power of the sun. Its power was not just in its carving, but in its placement. The stone is not isolated, it is in constant dialogue with the sacred landscape. Its sightlines are intentionally aligned with specific mountain peaks or apus, which were themselves considered powerful deities. This creates a holistic observatory where human-built geometry and the immutable architecture of nature work in concert. The surrounding peaks become permanent stone markers on the horizon, a celestial clock face built by the Earth itself, ensuring the record of time could never be lost or altered. This fusion of the built and the natural represents the ultimate ambition of these ancient astronomers, to make their understanding of the cosmos a permanent, unchangeable part of the world. But what happens when the civilization that built such a perfect, permanent record suddenly vanishes? How does a stone instrument designed to speak across centuries fare when the people who knew its language are gone? A civilization can vanish, but its knowledge sometimes finds a more subtle way to endure. Far from the monumental observatories of stone, a different kind of record was buried in a German forest for 3,600 years. The Nebra sky disk is not a building, but a portable codex of the heavens, a bronze map of the night sky small enough to hold in your hands. Its discovery in 1999 shattered assumptions, revealing that Bronze Age people in the heart of Europe possessed a sophisticated, unified understanding of cosmic cycles. This artifact, dating to around 1600 before the Common Era, is considered the oldest known concrete depiction of the cosmos in the world, against a background of blue-green patina, likely created with malachite, gold leaf symbols gleam. A full circle and a crescent moon dominate the field, surrounded by a scattering of stars. Researchers believe one distinct cluster represents the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters, a star group of immense importance to ancient agricultural societies. But the disk's true genius is in its additions. Later, two golden arcs were added to the left and right edges, each spanning exactly 82 degrees, an angle that perfectly matches the difference between the summer and winter solstice sunsets at the disk's likely latitude. Then a final arc, perhaps representing a solar boat, was added to the bottom. This was not a static picture, it was an evolving instrument. Each modification represents a layer of accumulated knowledge being physically integrated into the object. The inclusion of the Pleiades is the key to its function. This cluster disappears from the night sky for a period each year, and its first reappearance just before dawn, known as its heliacal rising, was a critical marker for ancient farmers across the globe. In Mesopotamia, it signaled the flood season. In Greece, it marked the start of the sailing season. For the people who made the Nebra disk, its rising likely announced the time to begin spring planting. The disk, therefore, synthesizes multiple celestial rhythms. It combines the solar year marked by the solstice arcs, the lunar month shown by the crescent, and the agricultural year signaled by the Pleiades. It was likely a tool to reconcile the lunar and solar calendars, a problem that occupied priests and astronomers for millennia. Its portability is its most revolutionary feature. This advanced astronomical understanding was not locked into a single sacred site on a distant hilltop. It could be carried by a spiritual leader or a community elder. It was a reference manual for harmonizing human activity with the sky, usable across territories and preservable across generations. The disk ensured that the precise timing for ceremonies, for planting, and for harvest, knowledge that meant the difference between plenty and hardship, could be kept accurate and transferred without distortion. It turned celestial observation from a fixed architectural event into a mobile, institutional memory. So while the great stone circles tracked the sky for centuries, this unassuming bronze disk did something equally profound. It allowed the sky itself to travel, ensuring that the essential connection between the Earth and the stars could never be lost, no matter where the people journeyed. High on a remote Wyoming plateau where the wind carries a permanent chill, a circle of stone speaks a silent language of stars. The Big Horn medicine wheel is not a towering structure, but a profound idea made physical, a pattern laid directly upon the sacred earth. At first glance, it appears simple, a central cairn of stones from which 28 spokes radiate outward to a large outer ring, with 6 smaller cairns positioned around its circumference. This simplicity, however, is the heart of its genius. For perhaps 3,000 years, this unassuming arrangement served as a precise celestial calendar, used and maintained by generations of indigenous peoples who understood the sky as a living relative. Archaeological and astronomical studies reveal its intricate purpose. Specific cairns align perfectly with the dramatic sunrise and sunset points of the summer solstice, anchoring the site to the solar year. But the wheel's true sophistication lies in its other alignments, those pointing to the heliacal risings of brilliant stars like Aldebaran, Rigel, and Sirius. This is where the concept of deep time becomes tangible. A star alignment is not a one-time event. It is a relationship that slowly, inexorably changes. Due to the precession of Earth's axis, the point on the horizon where a particular star first appears at dawn shifts minutely each year. For an alignment to remain accurate over centuries, the knowledge of that star's changing path had to be carefully observed, remembered, and passed down from elder to youth across dozens of human lifetimes. The wheel's cairns are not just markers, they are the endpoints of sightlines preserved in cultural memory. This makes the medicine wheel something far more powerful than a static monument. It was a living site of observation and ceremony. Individuals would likely journey to this high place at specific times, using the cairns as backsites to frame the rising of a star or the sun against a distant peak. In that moment, the pattern in the sky was mirrored perfectly by the pattern on the ground, creating a sacred union between cosmos and community. It represents a fundamentally different philosophy of tracking time, one built on sustainability and profound connection rather than permanent, altering construction. No mountains were moved, no forests cleared. Only stones were carefully placed to highlight an eternal conversation already happening between the land and the heavens. This approach asks us a quiet but important question. In our drive to build lasting records, have we overlooked the power of working with the landscape rather than upon it? The wheel suggests that the most enduring observatory might not be the one that dominates its environment, but the one that humbly listens to it, a lesson written not in quarried stone, but in the patient arrangement of rocks upon a windswept plain. The most elegant calendars are written not in stone but in light. High on the sheer face of Fajoda but in Chaco Canyon, the ancient Puebloan people engineered a celestial event of stunning simplicity. 3 massive, carefully positioned stone slabs lean against the cliff, and behind them spirals are carved into the rock itself. This is the Sun Dagger site, and it performs a silent, annual ballet of shadow and illumination. On the morning of the summer solstice, a single, sharp blade of sunlight pierces the gap between the slabs and slices directly through the heart of the largest spiral. 6 months later, on the winter solstice, 2 distinct daggers of light appear, perfectly bracketing the same spiral on either side. And during the equinoxes, a single beam bisects a smaller, neighboring spiral. This is not a monument you walk through, it is a phenomenon you witness, a passive, immovable clock that uses the sun itself as its only moving part. The breathtaking precision of this alignment reveals a deep, patient understanding. Someone had to observe the sun's path from this exact spot for years, perhaps generations, to learn where its light would fall on the rock throughout the seasons. Only then could they move those multi-ton slabs into their precise, leaning positions, turning a natural cliff into a calibrated instrument. The goal was not to build something new, but to curate an existing dialogue between the sun and the stone, to highlight a truth that was already there. This makes the Sun Dagger profoundly fragile. It is a collaboration between human intention and a natural formation, and that balance is delicate. Since its modern discovery, the slabs have shifted slightly, likely due to erosion and human interaction, and the perfect daggers of light have been altered. This fragility speaks volumes. It shows us that these ancient observatories were not set and forget machines. They were dynamic features in a living landscape, requiring observation, maintenance, and sometimes recalibration across the centuries. The knowledge of how to read them and how to care for them was a tradition passed down and adapted. The Sun Dagger, in its elegant silence, asks us to reconsider what an observatory really is. It suggests that the ultimate goal was not always grand construction, but sometimes a profound act of noticing, of positioning oneself in the right place at the right time to see the cosmos inscribe its laws onto the world. What other subtle, light-written calendars have we overlooked because we were searching for towers and temples, instead of watching for a dagger of light on a sunlit wall? While stones and shadows recorded the sky's slow dance, one ancient culture pursued a different kind of mastery. They sought not just to mark celestial events, but to hold a working model of the cosmos in their hands. In the silent depths of the Aegean Sea, off the coast of a small Greek island, a shipwreck held a secret that would rewrite our understanding of ancient technology. Sponge divers in the year 1900 discovered a corroded lump of bronze and wood among classical statues, a seemingly unremarkable artifact that sat in a museum storage room for decades. Only when modern X-ray technology peered inside did the world realize what had been found. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, a complex astronomical calculator from the 2nd century before the Common Era, and it is nothing less than the world's first known analog computer. Crafted from at least 30 interlocking bronze gears housed in a wooden case, this device was a portable universe. By turning a small hand crank on its side, a user could set a date and watch as intricate dials and pointers sprang to life. One dial tracked the sun's path through the constellations of the zodiac. Another displayed the phases of the moon with breathtaking accuracy, showing its exact shape in the sky on any given day. Inscriptions on the casing suggest it may have even modeled the erratic motions of the 5 known planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. This was not a simple calendar, it was a dynamic simulation of the heavens themselves. The true genius of the mechanism lies in the mathematical cycles it was engineered to replicate. Its creators encoded the Mnemonic cycle, a period of 19 solar years that equals exactly 235 lunar months. This was the fundamental problem of uniting the solar and lunar calendars, a challenge faced by every ancient society, solved here with rotating bronze gears. Even more astonishingly, it modeled the Saros cycle, an 18-year period after which eclipses repeat in a similar pattern. A small dial, likely predicting whether an eclipse would be solar or lunar, and even the time of day it might occur, turned with patient, mechanical certainty. This meant a scholar in Athens could, with a few turns of a crank, fast forward through decades of celestial time, predicting eclipses and planetary alignments that they would never live to see. This device represents a monumental shift in thinking. It encapsulated generations of Babylonian and Greek astronomical observations into a single, intricate machine. Instead of building a temple aligned to a solstice that would occur in 1,000 years, the maker of this mechanism built a portable engine that could calculate that solstice's date in a matter of seconds. It was a bridge between the monumental, eternal observatory and the personal, immediate tool. The mechanism allowed for experimentation and inquiry, for asking what if. What if we look ahead 50 years? Where will Jupiter be? What lunar phase will accompany the next solar eclipse? It turned long-term celestial prediction from a sacred, site-specific ritual into a form of personal knowledge. The Antikythera Mechanism stands as a stunning outlier, a glimpse of a technological path not taken. It proves that ancient thinkers possessed not only the observational patience to track the sky over lifetimes, but also the mechanical ingenuity to replicate its laws in miniature. They moved from simply reading the cosmos to attempting to rebuild it, gear by precise bronze gear. This raises a haunting question: how many other such devices, these portable Stonehenges, were lost to time, their delicate gears melted down or rusted away into oblivion? And what does it say about our own legacy that we are only now, with our digital simulations, catching up to an idea conceived over 2,000 years ago in a workshop by the Mediterranean Sea? The Antikythera Mechanism is a breathtaking exception, a written manual in bronze. For most ancient cultures, the instruction book for the cosmos was not etched in metal, but woven into the very fabric of their stories. Without libraries or hard drives, how could a civilization preserve the precise timing of an 18.6-year lunar cycle, or the slow creep of precession across 26,000 years? The answer lies in a technology far more durable than stone or bronze: the human memory, carefully structured through myth, ritual, and an unbroken chain of spoken teaching. For these societies, a myth was never just a fanciful tale. As scholar Mircea Eliade observed, it was sacred history, a true account of how the world works, told to govern behavior and explain reality. The movements of the sun, moon, and stars were the most visible expressions of that divine order. So naturally, they became characters in the story. A god who dies and is reborn might mirror the sun's journey at the winter solstice. A great flood that cleanses the world could be an allegory for the transition from one astrological age to the next, as the equinox point processes through the constellations over millennia. The Greek story of Phaethon, the son of Helios who loses control of the sun chariot and scorches the earth, reads like a dramatic encapsulation of a climate catastrophe, possibly a folk memory of a drought or fire, linked to an observed celestial event like a comet. These narratives were not mere decoration, they were mnemonic vessels, complex astronomical data, which would be a dry list of numbers to us, was transformed into a compelling saga of love, conflict, and adventure, making it unforgettable. The story carried the data. Ritual acted as the practical reinforcement, a ceremony performed only when the Pleiades first appeared at dawn, or a pilgrimage made to watch the solstice sunrise pierce a temple door, turned abstract celestial timing into a full-body, communal experience. You didn't just know the date, you felt it, you danced it, you celebrated it. This lived repetition, generation after generation, baked the timing into the cultural rhythm, making deviation almost unthinkable. The final, crucial layer was the rigorous oral tradition maintained by specialized custodians, whether priests, shamans, or elders. This was not casual storytelling around a fire. It was a formal, disciplined apprenticeship. A young initiate would spend years memorizing chants, star lists, and procedures with exacting precision, learning not just the stories but the precise observational techniques, how to sight along a notch in the landscape, how to count the nights between lunar phases. The knowledge was a sacred trust, and its accurate transmission was a duty to the ancestors and to the future. This is why the meaning behind the alignments at Stonehenge or Chankillo could survive long after the names of the engineers faded. The stones were the permanent, silent hardware, but the myths and rituals were the living, evolving software that told people how to use them. They ensured that a community, centuries later, still knew that when a certain star rose over a certain tower, it was time to plant or to honor the gods or to renew a covenant with the sky. The sky itself was the first text, and humanity learned to read it by turning it into a story they could never forget. A silent stone cannot tell you its purpose, but the sky above it still holds the original blueprint. This is the foundation of Archaeoastronomy, a modern detective story that pieces together the intentions of ancient builders by merging the tools of the astronomer with the trowel of the archaeologist. It begins with the painstaking work of field survey, meticulously mapping every stone, every sightline, every horizon notch with tools far more precise than the ropes and stakes of the past. Pioneers like Alexander Thom spent decades measuring hundreds of megalithic sites across Britain, his detailed surveys revealing patterns of consistent units of measurement and repeated astronomical alignments that could not be mere chance. This work established a crucial principle that to understand the monument, you must first understand the precise landscape it inhabits, but the survey is only the first clue. The next step requires a leap back through time to reconstruct the ancient sky itself. This is where modern technology becomes a time machine. Software can now account for the slow wobble of Earth's axis, the precession, and even subtle changes in the tilt of our planet, known as the obliquity of the ecliptic. It can simulate the atmospheric conditions of 2,000 years ago, calculating how refraction would bend the light of a rising star. With these tools, a researcher can stand at the center of a ruined circle, look through a tablet screen, and see the exact constellation that hung over a specific stone on the night of a solstice 5 millennia in the past. This digital recreation transforms speculation into testable hypotheses. Yet, the most critical task of archaeoastronomy is statistical. With so many stones and so many stars, how do we know an alignment is intentional and not a random product of nature? The answer lies in probability. Researchers look for clusters of alignments to significant celestial events like solstices, equinoxes, or the standstill points of the moon. If a site has multiple stones that all point to these key dates far beyond what random chance would allow, the evidence for deliberate design becomes overwhelming. This scientific rigor helps separate genuine celestial architecture from romantic modern projections. However, the greatest challenge for this field is not mathematical but cultural. It must guard against imposing our own worldview onto the past. Assuming every alignment is a precise solar calendar ignores the rich tapestry of myth, ritual, and seasonal ceremony that likely accompanied the astronomical event. This is where anthropology and respect for indigenous knowledge become essential. For many cultures, the sky was not a clock but a story, and the alignment was a chapter in that narrative, not a data point. A true synthesis listens to the living oral traditions that have survived, seeing them not as folklore but as complementary records of observation. What archaeoastronomy ultimately reveals is a portrait of the ancient mind as that of a meticulous empirical scientist. These builders developed repeatable methods. They collected data across generations. They engineered solutions to track cycles longer than a lifetime. They were not simply gazing in wonder, they were measuring, predicting, and encoding. By applying this interdisciplinary lens, we stop seeing ruins as static art and start seeing them as dynamic scientific instruments, frozen in stone but forever ticking in rhythm with a universe they learn to read with breathtaking, long-term clarity. This slow celestial drift was the ultimate test for any long-term observatory. The precession of the equinoxes means the entire star field pivots around a fixed point over a grand cycle of 26,000 years. A temple doorway perfectly aligned with the rising sun on a solstice in the year 2500 before the Common Era would find that same sun rising noticeably to the side just a few centuries later. To build a permanent stone instrument under these conditions was an act of breathtaking foresight, and mounting evidence suggests the master builders knew exactly what they were up against. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its internal shafts, once thought to be air vents, point directly to specific stars. One aligns with Thuban in the constellation Draco, which was the North Star, the pivot of the heavens, around the time of the pyramid's construction. The builders intentionally anchored their monument to a celestial marker that they knew was temporary, embedding a timestamp of their own era into the very geometry of the structure. This was more than an alignment, it was a recorded observation of the sky's slow motion. We see a similar long conversation at Stonehenge. The monument was not built in a single campaign, but modified and rearranged over more than 1,000 years. While the reasons are complex, some archaeoastronomers propose that the shifting positions of stones, the addition of new features, could represent subtle recalibrations. As the sun's rising point crept along the horizon due to precession, generations may have returned to the sacred site to adjust their giant stone clock, ensuring it continued to tick in harmony with the cosmos. This implies a cultural continuity so profound that a change first noted by a great-grandfather could be acted upon by his great-grandson, all in service of a calendar meant for the ages. To design for precession requires a radical concept of time. It is not the linear arrow we imagine today, but a vast turning wheel. In this view, the universe operates in immense, repeating cycles where everything that has happened will, in some form, happen again. Building an observatory to track a 26,000-year cycle is an act of faith in that eternal return. It transforms the structure from a tool for the living into a message for the future. This leads to a haunting and beautiful possibility. Did these ancient astronomers, in their meticulous calculations, envision a far distant audience? Were they building not only for their immediate descendants, but for a civilization yet to come, one that would stand among their ruins millennia later, measure the same alignments, and in that moment of rediscovery, complete a cosmic circuit of knowledge? The stone itself becomes a bridge across time, connecting two minds separated by epochs but united by the same silent, shining truth written in the stars. But a predictable sky was only half the story. Beyond the steady rhythm of sun and moon lay the true celestial dramas, events so rare and terrifying they could rewrite history in a single night. Ancient astronomers also trained their eyes on the unpredictable, the awe-inspiring disruptions, total solar eclipses, the sudden arrival of blazing comets, and the violent death of distant stars. While the solstice returned with comforting regularity, these phenomena operated on timescales that stretched far beyond a single human life, demanding a different kind of wisdom. A total solar eclipse is a moment of profound cosmic theater, when day becomes an eerie twilight and the sun's corona blazes like a halo around the black disk of the moon. Predicting such an event with any accuracy required recognizing a subtle long-term pattern, the Saros cycle. This is a period of approximately 18 years and 11 days after which the sun, moon, and earth return to nearly the same relative geometry, and a similar eclipse will occur. It is a pattern hidden within patterns, a celestial echo. We know the Antikythera Mechanism could calculate these cycles with its intricate gears, but long before that bronze computer, people may have been marking them in stone. Take the massive alignments at Carnac in France, thousands of standing stones arranged in rows over several miles. Some researchers propose that the complex geometry of these megalithic avenues could have been used as a giant calculator, tracking the moon's complex motions over decades to pinpoint the dangerous window when an eclipse might occur. To dedicate such labor to predicting an event you might see only once or twice in your lifetime reveals a priority that goes beyond the practical. It was about managing cosmic fear, about transforming a terrifying omen into a scheduled, and therefore controlled, ceremony. Comets and supernova presented an even greater challenge, for they were truly unpredictable across human timescales. A great comet, with its brilliant tail sweeping across the fixed stars, appeared without warning. A supernova, the catastrophic explosion of a star, could shine brighter than Venus for weeks before fading from view forever. In the absence of a predictable pattern, these events were interpreted through the lens of meaning. They were divine messengers, portents of a king's passing or an empire's fall. The key was to record them with absolute precision. Chinese court astronomers were masterful at this. Their annals are filled with meticulous notes on guest stars, unexpected visitors in the celestial realm. One entry from July 1054 Common Era describes a star so bright it was visible in daylight for 23 days. We now know this was the supernova that created the Crab Nebula, a cosmic event whose remnant we can still observe today with telescopes. That ancient record is not just a historical curiosity. It is a vital data point for modern astrophysicists, allowing them to understand the expansion and age of that stellar debris with incredible accuracy. By inscribing the event onto bamboo strips or silk, those astronomers extended the collective memory of their civilization, turning a fleeting spectacle into a permanent celestial landmark. This drive to capture the transient was universal. A petroglyph carved onto a canyon wall in the American Southwest might depict a crescent moon near a bright circle, a possible record of a long-past supernova. A line in a Babylonian cuneiform tablet might note the year a hairy star, their term for a comet, appeared in the path of Jupiter. These records served a profound purpose. They wove singular, shocking events into the continuous tapestry of the cosmic narrative. A king's list could be anchored by reference to the year the great comet was seen. A myth about a god's fiery chariot crashing to Earth might preserve the cultural memory of a meteor storm. By making a record, they were building a library of celestial anomalies, gathering the long-term data needed to one day discern order in the seemingly chaotic heavens. It was an act of faith that someone, generations later, would look back and connect the dots, seeing not random acts of God, but the slow, grand patterns of a universe that operates on a schedule we are only beginning to comprehend. The stones and stars held a power more tangible than any army. In the ancient world, knowledge of the celestial calendar was not merely academic, it was the ultimate political currency. The individual or class who could announce the exact day for planting, the precise hour for a sacred rite, or the ominous window for a potential eclipse wielded influence over life, death, and the very rhythm of society. This was not abstract authority, it was control over time itself, transformed from a natural cycle into a managed resource. The observatories we have explored were rarely isolated scientific outposts. They were the beating hearts of ceremonial centers, physical proof that the ruling elite enjoyed a direct line to the cosmic order. At Chankillo, the fortified complex surrounding the solar towers makes this explicit. The rulers did not just observe the sun, they owned the spectacle. By controlling access to the observation points, they monopolized the right to declare the turning of the seasons, thereby dictating the agricultural calendar for the entire region. Their power was legitimized every single dawn as the sun obediently rose between their stone markers. Similarly, the Inca emperor, as the son of the sun god Inti, used the Intihuatana at Machu Picchu to perform his divine role. His ability to ritually tether the sun at the solstices was a public demonstration that his rule was essential to maintaining cosmic balance and, by extension, the fertility of the land and the stability of the state. This celestial mandate translated into absolute earthly control. The calendar regulated everything, the timing of planting and harvest, which dictated the tax cycle, the auspicious dates for launching military campaigns, and the schedule of mandatory public festivals that reinforced communal identity and loyalty. To defy the calendar was to defy the gods and the state simultaneously. This political imperative explains the staggering scale of investment. Mobilizing thousands of workers for decades to move multi-ton stones with pinpoint accuracy only makes sense if the resulting structure guarantees a monopoly on a vital source of power. The long-term nature of these projects was their masterstroke. A pharaoh or king who broke ground on a solstice-aligned temple was not just building for his reign, he was laying a foundation of legitimacy for his entire dynasty. The monument would stand for centuries, a permanent, unarguable testament that his lineage held a special covenant with the heavens. Each subsequent ruler would benefit from this inherited cosmic authority, their right to rule validated by a stone instrument set in motion by their ancestors. This transformed the observatory from a scientific tool into a dynastic machine, engineered to convert celestial precision into enduring political stability. It prompts us to reconsider these sites not just as temples to the gods, but as monuments to a brilliant, calculated strategy, one that used the infinite patience of the cosmos to cement the power of a chosen few for generations untold. A temple was more than a house for the gods, it was a carefully calibrated instrument for their arrival. Across continents and cultures, the foundational blueprints of sacred architecture encoded precise astronomical knowledge, turning grand structures into public calendars that marked time with beams of light. This integration of sky watching and spirituality meant that every solstice or equinox became a communal event, a moment when the divine visibly entered the human realm. In Egypt, the immense temple complex of Karnak was a machine for the sun. Its primary axis is aligned to the winter solstice sunrise, so that on the shortest day of the year, the rising sun would shine directly down the long, columned hall, illuminating the inner sanctuary. Another critical alignment was to the star Sirius, known as Sopdet to the Egyptians. Its heliacal rising, its first dawn appearance after months of invisibility, coincided with the annual flooding of the Nile, the lifeblood of the civilization. By aligning a temple to this celestial event, the priests wove the promise of renewal and abundance directly into the stone, making the cosmic trigger for the flood a part of state ritual. Far across the Atlantic, the builders of Teotihuacan engineered their city as a model of the cosmos. The Street of the Dead is aligned 15.5 degrees east of north, an orientation that frames the setting of the Pleiades star cluster, a grouping of immense significance in Mesoamerican cosmology. The Pyramid of the Sun, the city's colossal centerpiece, is positioned so that an observer standing on its summit on the day it passes directly overhead, the zenith passage, would cast no shadow at noon. This alignment to the sun at its peak power tied the ruler's authority to the apex of solar energy, a literal and symbolic high point in the annual cycle. Even in classical Greece, celestial harmony guided construction. The Parthenon on the Acropolis in Athens is not aligned to a solstice, but to the pre-dawn rising of the constellation Hyades. This event marked the Panathenaic festival, the most important religious celebration in the city, which honored the goddess Athena, the city's patron. On the morning of the festival, as the procession began, the constellation would appear in alignment with the temple's eastern facade, as if the stars themselves were presiding over the rites. This practice transformed the temple from a passive backdrop into an active participant in the ceremony. The architectural genius lay in the details, a narrow window placed to cast a single spot of light onto a gold statue on a god's birthday, a specific altar illuminated only on the day of a patron deity's festival. This required the architects to possess and apply foundational astronomy from the very first foundation stone. They had to calculate not just where the sun or star would be that year, but where it would be for centuries to come, ensuring the miracle would repeat annually. This created a powerful, self-perpetuating cycle. The alignment validated the ritual, and the ritual, repeated generation after generation, reinforced the sacred power of the alignment. It also represents a subtle democratization of celestial observation. While only the priesthood might understand the complex calculations, the entire community could witness the result, sharing in the awe as the sun's ray touched the idol or the star appeared over the temple peak. The sky's order was made visible and tangible, uniting society under a shared, celestial schedule written in stone and light. The true heart of these observatories beats in a rhythm we can no longer hear. We stand amid the stones and can calculate with stunning precision where the sunbeam fell, but we cannot feel the collective breath of the community holding as that light first touched the inner chamber. The chants that greeted the dawn, the scent of burning herbs, the weight of ceremonial garments, the personal visions or revelations experienced in that charged moment, all of this lived knowledge has faded like morning mist. This is the profound and permanent gap in our understanding. We have recovered the hardware, the exquisite stone machinery, but the software, the operating system of belief, ritual, and lived experience, is a fragmented code we are still piecing together. This loss is compounded by the silence forced upon many traditions. The relentless tides of history, including colonization and cultural upheaval, have severed vital lines of oral transmission. A detailed star lore passed from elder to youth for 100 generations can be silenced within a single lifetime. When that happens, a stone circle becomes a beautiful but cryptic arrangement, its most nuanced meanings locked away forever. Even the physical record is tragically incomplete. Archaeology has a built-in bias, a preference for the durable. Grand structures of granite and limestone endure for millennia, proudly announcing their presence. But what of the observatories built from wood, from carefully woven fiber screens, or from aligned posts set into soft earth? These tools for tracking the sky would have rotted away centuries ago, leaving not a single trace on the landscape. Our entire picture of ancient astronomy is therefore skewed toward the cultures that built in stone, potentially overlooking countless other ingenious, ephemeral methods for conversing with the cosmos. Consider the possibility of a vast, temporary observatory constructed for a single, multi-generational project. A society might plant a sacred grove of trees in a specific pattern, using the growing trunks as living sightlines to track a star's drift over a century. Once the observation was complete, the grove might be ritually harvested, the knowledge recorded in a song, and the land returned to forest. To us, that site would be invisible, just another patch of woods. Or imagine detailed sky maps embroidered onto ceremonial cloths, or complex calendrical data encoded into the steps of a dance performed only once every 52 years. These fragile technologies of memory are gone, leaving our modern reconstructions feeling solid in their geometry but hollow in their human context. This enduring mystery, however, is not a failure of science. It is a necessary reminder of humility. Our current understanding is a brilliant reconstruction, a best guess woven from threads of astronomy, archaeology, and surviving folklore. It tells us what the stones were built to do, but it can only whisper what it truly meant to be there. That gap between measurement and meaning is where the true allure of these places lies. It invites us to contemplate not just the intellectual achievement, but the profound emotional and spiritual dialogue our ancestors maintained with the universe. They sought not just to predict the sky, but to partner with it, to embed their stories and their societies within its grand, inhuman timescale. In acknowledging what we may never fully know, we pay the deepest respect to the complexity of their world, a world where every sunrise was a word in an endless, sacred conversation. The silent stones left a challenge written in geometry and light, a challenge modern science has only recently gained the tools to accept. We are now in the midst of a technological revolution in archaeology, one that allows us to test the alignments of the ancients with a precision they could only dream of, and in doing so, we are often left in greater awe of their achievements. The key lies in tools that see what the human eye cannot. Three-dimensional laser scanning, or LiDAR, has transformed our understanding of entire landscapes. By firing millions of laser pulses from an aircraft, it strips away the dense jungle canopy to reveal the ground beneath. At sites like Angkor Wat in Cambodia, LiDAR did not just find lost temples, it revealed vast, previously invisible networks of canals and roads arranged in a celestial grid, suggesting the entire urban plan was a mirror of cosmic order. This technology shows us that the observatory was sometimes not a single building, but the entire city itself, engineered as a reflection of the heavens. High above, drones provide a new kind of vantage point. They can hover at the exact height an ancient priest might have stood, capturing panoramic images that let researchers analyze sightlines with photogrammetric accuracy. Was that distant mountain peak truly the intended target for a solstice alignment? A drone can map the precise angle from the temple doorway to the horizon notch, removing centuries of guesswork. Meanwhile, on the ground, surveyors use ultra-precise GPS units that can pinpoint a stone's location to within centimeters, allowing them to create digital models of a site that account for every subtle tilt and erosion. But the true time machine is modern planetarium software. Programs can now calculate the exact position of every star and planet for any date in human history. correcting for precession, atmospheric refraction, and even the slight changes in Earth's orbit. An archaeoastronomer can input the precise coordinates of a standing stone, set the digital clock to 4,000 years before the Common Era, and watch as the virtual sky rotates above it. This is how we get definitive proof. At Chankillo, software confirmed that the 13 towers act as a perfect solar calendar, with the December solstice sunrise aligning with the southernmost tower within a margin of error smaller than the width of your finger held at arm's length. This is not speculation, it is a measurable, repeatable fact. This technological dialogue serves a crucial second purpose. It rigorously separates genuine celestial engineering from modern myth. Fringe theories often propose alignments to obscure stars or claim impossibly precise knowledge for ancient cultures. The cool, unblinking eye of the data can test these claims. If a proposed alignment requires a star that was not visible above the local horizon at the time, or if the statistical probability of a cluster of alignments falls within random chance, the software reveals it. This scientific rigor protects the legacy of the ancient astronomers, elevating their real, demonstrable achievements above sensational fiction. What emerges from this verification is a humbling truth. In case after case, the data confirms their extraordinary accuracy. The question then subtly shifts from did they do this to a more profound mystery. How on earth did they do this? Our satellites and lasers confirm the end result, but they deepen the wonder surrounding the process. We are left holding the answer while marveling at the immense, patient journey required to find it without a single microchip. This collaborative test across millennia, where the past built the experiment and the present finally reads the results, does more than validate history. It forges a new kind of connection, a handshake across time between two different kinds of scientists, united by the same timeless sky. A profound responsibility accompanies our newfound ability to read these ancient stones. As we map alignments with lasers and simulate skies with software, we are not merely studying inert ruins, we are often engaging with active, sacred landscapes. The Big Horn Medicine Wheel is not an archaeological site to its traditional caretakers. It is a living place of prayer and ceremony, its meaning carried in stories and songs passed down for generations. This reality creates an essential ethical dimension to our curiosity. For too long, Western science approached such places with a mindset of extraction, treating indigenous knowledge as mere data to be collected and interpreted by outside experts, often severing that knowledge from the living communities that sustained it. This history of appropriation and misinterpretation casts a long shadow, one that demands a new approach centered on permission, collaboration, and deep respect. Ethical engagement begins by recognizing indigenous knowledge holders not as subjects of study, but as the foremost experts on their own cultural heritage. It means entering into genuine partnership where scientific questions are framed alongside and often guided by the priorities and understandings of the descendant communities. This collaborative model transforms the work. It shifts the goal from simply uncovering what a site was to understanding what it means and what it continues to mean in a holistic sense that encompasses science, spirituality, and cultural identity. The fragility of these places adds another layer of urgency. The sun dagger at Fajada Butte was unintentionally damaged by well-meaning researchers and the cumulative impact of foot traffic. This serves as a stark reminder that our physical presence can alter the very phenomena we seek to understand. Responsible tourism, guided access, and remote sensing technologies become tools not just of discovery, but of preservation, ensuring that delicate stone calendars are not loved to death by admirers. Ultimately, this ethical path acknowledges a vital truth for many cultures. This astronomical wisdom is not a relic locked in the past. It is a living tradition, a continuous thread connecting ancestors to the present through the shared medium of the stars. By approaching with humility and a commitment to partnership, we do more than protect physical sites from erosion or vandalism. We honor the intellectual and spiritual legacy encoded within them. We ensure that the long-term conversation between humanity and the cosmos, a conversation these cultures maintained with such patience and brilliance, can continue not as a monologue of analysis, but as a respectful, cross-generational dialogue. This respectful stance may be the most important alignment we can achieve, one that grounds our modern inquiry in the timeless values of reciprocity and reverence. A stone observatory requires no software update. Its data is the sunbeam itself, striking the same carved marker century after century. This represents humanity's oldest and perhaps most resilient form of information storage, encoding knowledge not in symbols subject to forgotten languages, but in a direct physical relationship with the cosmos. The drive to preserve understanding beyond a single lifespan is a constant thread in our story. Ancient cultures poured generations of labor into aligning granite with galactic cycles. Later, we carved laws onto stone steels, like the famous Rosetta Stone, and gathered scrolls into vast repositories like the Library of Alexandria. Today, we etch data onto silicon and beam it into cloud servers orbiting the planet. The mediums change from megalith to manuscript to microchip, but the core impulse remains identical: to create a record that whispers to the future. Yet each method carries its own vulnerability. A library can burn. A digital file format can become unreadable, trapped in obsolete code, a modern-day undecipherable script. A server farm requires a constant, fragile supply of power and a stable society to maintain it. The stone observatory, however, operates on a different principle. It is a passive, analog system. Its storage medium is the structure itself, and its processor is the predictable motion of celestial bodies. As long as the stones do not fall and the sky remains visible, the data remains accessible. It needs no translator, no electricity, no compatible operating system. A person from any culture, in any future era, can witness the solstice light pierce the temple corridor and understand the intentionality behind it, even if they never learn the name of the builder. This resilience prompts a sobering reflection on our own legacy. We are creating an unimaginable volume of digital information, but how much of it is built to last a century, let alone a millennium? Our records are increasingly ephemeral, dependent on a vast, interconnected technological civilization. In contrast, the builders of Newgrange or Chankillo embedded their knowledge within the fundamental, cyclical grammar of the solar system itself. They partnered with time, using its own reliable rhythms as the carrier for their message. So this ancient strategy asks us a pressing question. As we design our own monuments to knowledge, what are we aligning them with? Are we tethering our legacy to the shifting sands of technological progress, or are we seeking a foundation as enduring as the stars they once watched? What in our world today is being built with the patience to speak clearly to humans 5,000 years from now? The sky spoke a language that every human culture, in its own way, learned to translate. From the windswept plains of Wyoming to the deserts of Peru, from the forests of Germany to the islands of Greece, societies with no conceivable contact arrived at eerily similar conclusions about how to read the cosmos. This is not a story of borrowed ideas, but of a shared human mind encountering the same magnificent puzzle. The most striking parallel is the horizon calendar. Whether it was the 13 towers of Chankillo, the stone pillars of Stonehenge, or a single notch between two distant mountain peaks, the solution was universally elegant. They all used the stable line where the earth meets the sky as their giant ruler, turning the landscape itself into a permanent measuring device. The solstices and equinoxes, those fundamental hinges of the solar year, became almost universal focal points. These were not arbitrary dates, they were the critical turning points in the cycle of light and dark, of warmth and cold that dictated survival. It is as if every culture, by simply watching with patient eyes, was drawn to these moments of celestial balance and extreme. Even specific celestial objects captured global imagination. The Pleiades star cluster, a tiny smudge of light we call the Seven Sisters, appears in the lore of cultures separated by oceans. It marks the agricultural calendar on the Nebra sky disk in Bronze Age Europe, and its heliacal rising signals planting times in traditions across the Americas and the Pacific. This tiny cluster, visible to the naked eye, became a universal alarm clock for humanity, its annual disappearance and return a reliable signal woven into myth and practice from one side of the world to the other. What does this tell us? It points to something profound in the human condition, a shared cognitive toolkit for pattern recognition applied to the most prominent and regular feature of the natural world. Faced with the pressing need to predict seasons for planting, to time migrations, and to organize communal rituals, independent cultures conducted the same long-term experiment. They observed, they recorded, they tested their hypotheses across generations, and they engineered stone solutions. This is convergent cultural evolution. Just as different species might independently evolve wings for flight, different societies evolved horizon calendars and solar markers to solve the same fundamental problems of timekeeping and cosmic meaning. This global tapestry of sky watching dismantles any outdated notion of isolated primitive cultures. Instead, it reveals a portrait of a deeply intelligent, curious, and patient human species, dispersed across the globe yet united by a common quest. They were all trying to answer the same enduring questions. Where do we fit within the grand machinery of the universe? And how can we leave a record of our understanding that will whisper to those who come long after we are gone? Our map of the ancient sky is still being drawn. Far from a solved puzzle, the field of ancient astronomy is entering its most exciting era, driven by tools that let us see the invisible and ask questions we never thought to pose. Each year, new sites emerge from the shadows. In dense jungles from Cambodia to the Amazon, LiDAR technology acts like a celestial X-ray, stripping away the canopy to reveal vast geometric complexes laid out on the ground, entire cities planned as mirrors for the stars. These aren't just new ruins, they are missing chapters in humanity's global conversation with the cosmos, waiting for their alignments to be measured and their stories decoded. But the revolution isn't only about finding new places, it's about hearing old ones in a new way. We are beginning to listen to these sites, not just look at them. Sophisticated acoustic surveys at certain stone circles and chambered tombs suggest their builders may have engineered for sound as well as sight. The way a chant or a drumbeat resonates within a stone corridor, or how the wind sings through a specially positioned aperture, could have been part of the ritual experience, making the celestial observation a full-body immersion of light and sound. This multisensory approach deepens our respect for their design, revealing layers of intention we are only now learning to perceive. To truly stand in their shoes, we must also see their sky. A growing global movement focuses on dark sky heritage, fighting the relentless glow of light pollution to preserve the pristine night views above these ancient observatories. The goal is profound: to restore the essential context, the faint band of the Milky Way, the delicate haze of zodiacal light, the sheer overwhelming number of visible stars. This was the canvas upon which they painted their myths and calibrated their stones. Protecting these skies isn't just about astronomy. It's about preserving the very raw material of their genius. The next great leaps may come from weaving disparate threads of knowledge together. Imagine combining cutting-edge genetic analysis of ancient populations with precise climatology records and astronomical event timelines. Such interdisciplinary work could answer monumental questions. Did a prolonged drought, foretold or exacerbated by a rare planetary alignment, trigger a mass migration? Did the repeated failure to predict an eclipse contribute to a loss of faith in a ruling class? We are moving beyond what they built to understand how celestial events directly shaped the currents of history, influencing decisions of survival, power, and belief on a societal scale. Ultimately, the most significant discovery might not be a new monument at all. It could be the uncovering of the invisible network, the pedagogical system that trained the master astronomers. How was this precise, long-term knowledge curated and passed down? Were there schools, a rigorous apprenticeship of star lists and geometry taught over decades? Finding evidence of this knowledge transmission, perhaps in overlooked artifacts or in the subtle coding of myth, would be like finding the teacher's manual to the stone textbook. It would reveal the living intellect behind the alignment. The stones have kept their deepest secrets for millennia. They wait for the next curious mind armed with a new tool, a collaborative spirit, and the humility to listen. The future of this past is bright, promising not just more answers, but better, more human questions about our enduring need to find our place in the vast, ticking clockwork of the universe. These stone calendars hold up a mirror to our own relationship with time. Their silent, enduring presence speaks of a world where human life was understood as a single note in a symphony that played out over centuries. For the builders, time was not a resource to be spent, but a vast, cyclical pattern to be harmonized with. Their greatest works were not expressions of individual genius, but of cumulative, intergenerational wisdom, each generation laying stones for a purpose only their descendants would fully witness. This stands in stark contrast to our contemporary moment, where innovation is measured in quarterly reports and cultural attention spans flicker with the next trending topic. We live in an age of disruptive leaps, often discarding the old to make way for the new with breathtaking speed. These ancient sites ask us a quiet but urgent question: what profound understanding might we be losing in our relentless pursuit of the next thing? They challenge a subtle modern hubris, the belief that our current moment is the pinnacle of knowledge, rather than a single point on a much longer line. Their legacy was not built through sudden revolution, but through the patient, careful work of observation, correction, and preservation, handed down like a sacred heirloom. This concept of legacy is their most profound lesson. To invest a lifetime of labor into a solar marker whose perfect alignment you will never see requires a radical form of trust. It is a trust in the future, a belief that the knowledge you are encoding into the landscape will still be relevant, still be understood, and still be cared for by people you will never meet. It is an act of faith that your descendants will value the same cosmic truths, that they will continue the watch, and that they will remember you not by your name, but by the precision of your stonework. Do we possess that kind of faith today? Are we engaged in any cultural or scientific projects that demand a century to complete, projects whose full fruits will be harvested by our great-grandchildren? We build skyscrapers and digital networks, but are we building anything meant to patiently tick in rhythm with the universe for 1,000 years? These observatories ultimately reframe the very idea of a monument. A monument is not merely a marker of past power, it can be a gift to the future. It is a deliberate act of communication across the abyss of time, a message in a bottle made of granite and sunlight. The builders were not just talking to their gods, they were talking to us. They left a puzzle, a testament to their understanding, waiting for a future civilization to arrive, measure, and nod in recognition. This shifts our role from passive observers to active participants in a dialogue that spans millennia. When we stand in that solstice beam at Newgrange or map the sightlines of Chankillo, we are completing a circuit. We are the distant future they imagined, finally receiving their message. This realization carries a deep responsibility. It invites us to look up from our immediate concerns, not just at the stars they charted, but at the long arc of history upon which we are also a temporary mark. It asks us to consider with newfound humility what markers we are leaving behind. What will our stones be? What silent, enduring testament will we build that can whisper across the centuries to an audience we can scarcely imagine, saying, "We were here, we watched the sky, and we understood our small, wondrous place within it"? The final alignment is not in the stones but within us. This journey across continents and millennia reveals a stunning truth. Our ancestors were not merely stargazers, they were master engineers of time itself. They transformed mountain ridges and monolithic slabs into precise scientific instruments, capturing the slow, majestic dance of the cosmos on a scale that dwarfs our individual lives. Each site, from the sun dagger of Chaco Canyon to the bronze gears of the Antikythera Mechanism, represents a different chapter in a single, universal story, the human quest to find order in the heavens and etch that understanding into the world. These were not primitive attempts at science, but its sophisticated foundation, built with a patience we struggle to comprehend today. They understood that true knowledge required looking beyond the horizon of a single lifetime, planning for celestial events they would never witness, and building legacies meant for an audience they would never meet. This long-term thinking is their most profound gift to us. It reframes our place in history, not as the peak of understanding, but as a point on a continuum, receiving messages from the past and holding a responsibility to the future. So the next time you look up at the night sky, let your gaze linger. See it not as a random scattering of lights, but as the original library, the first clock, the eternal map that guided civilizations. Consider the long now, the vast cycles that turn irrespective of our daily concerns. And quietly ask yourself, in our age of fleeting digital data and rapid change, what are we building that whispers to the centuries ahead? What knowledge are we encoding with such care that it will speak clearly to generations 5,000 years from now, just as these stone observatories speak so eloquently to us today? If this journey through time and space has reshaped your view of the past, consider subscribing for more explorations into the mysteries that connect us across the ages. We would love to hear which ancient observatory most captivates your imagination, so share your thoughts in the comments below.